Looks like we're up and running.
Again, we are up and running. I'll take the glare off my glasses.
Well, maybe you should keep it on because I think we've got a glaring set of issues to run through today.
Yes, June 25. Juneteenth 25.
Juneteenth or something like that. Yeah.
2024, episode 21, season 3. See? Dementia still not kicking in.
In spite of our best efforts.
In spite of our best efforts.
Right.
Yeah. So, Bob, what do you think the week's been like?
Well, I thought things were going along pretty normally until I got up this morning. Well, I shouldn't say that. I had big hopes that in the Stanley Cup Finals that Edmonton might be able to break the drought. I predicted that wrong, I guess. And then I went to bed thinking, wow, nothing is really changing because it looks like the Liberal candidate in Toronto Central was going to be elected, albeit by maybe only 600 votes or so. I was very surprised when you sent the message to say that, surprise!
That's right. Just like, what was the name of that actor that had the great singing voice, but talked funny like he was from
Gomer Pyle.
That's it. Surprise, surprise, surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, well, I'm quite sure those folks who went to bed all pumped up that the riding was safe and that another Liberal victory was in the can must have been shocked and dismayed this morning.
Well, it wasn't quite shocked and chagrined as Johnny Cochran was, I guess, but shocked and dismayed was probably the Canadian equivalent.
Well, I think some people probably are concerned this morning in around the Prime Minister's office as to how to explain this one away.
Well, I think that's just going to be the standard page 3 of the playbook is well, it's just a by-election and they don't really mean an awful lot. And I think I had said pre-production I'd be wondering what some of the old Liberal pundits are saying, and you said that they're not taking this loss as a one-off. It looks like it might be the start of a rush to remove or to find somebody better, or I don't know.
Well, I think the statement from the woman running there, Leslie Church, who was the handpicked candidate of the Liberal Party after Bennett, the previous MP, when the riding left to become ambassador in Denmark, she issued a statement that said that the result was disappointing, but it's a beginning and not an end. Now you gotta just wonder who writes this stuff, okay? If that's the beginning, I don't know what the end is going to be for these guys.
Well,
I mean, it's startling.
Maybe they're going to take out a page of the Brothers Grimm, the fairy tales. And who knows?
Yeah, but listen to the word salad that was in her statement. She says yesterday, and I quote, this is what she posted on X, okay? She says, or whoever wrote it for her, says, yesterday's voters in Toronto St. Paul sent us a clear message that they want us to re-earn their trust. I hear that message loud and clear, and that's exactly what we plan to do. Now, this is so condescending, it's unbelievable. Next, she goes on to say, we heard from many people who are having a hard time. They want a government that fulfills its promise to be there for them. That does not mean we give up. It does not mean we walk away. It means we must deliver more action on their priorities. Well, you know what? You didn't listen to people who are having a hard time. You don't fill your promises to be there for the taxpayers. You have given up on most of them. You talk over their heads. You do walk away from the real serious issues that the people have. And you've never delivered on the priorities that the people who for the last 9 years have been expecting from your leader. So, it's it's just surprising to me that they'd have the guts to put that kind of nonsense out.
Well, I guess it goes back that in most political circles, if you say it long enough and loud enough and with enough zeal, maybe people will buy it. Maybe they're kind of hoping that this will be the one-off and people will be happy now that they've taught us a lesson and they're going to vote us back in next time. I don't know.
Well, it comes in the heels of an MP in Toronto, another Liberal MP who actually quit on the weekend, said he'd had enough of this shenanigans going on. And, I think there's much to be said for rats jumping the ship, before it sinks. Like all good things, they must pass. That could be a song. George Harrison, all good things must pass, or all things must pass. That was the name of the album. All things must pass.
Yeah.
Well, these guys need to pass too. They need to go into the history books as having spent 9 years basically conning people from 2015 onwards and then running out of cons after basically 3 elections. And the only reason that these guys are still around is there's a guy called Jagmeet Singh, who, if he wanted to be a hero instead of a zero, could pull the pin on this thing right away. Let the people decide whether or not the promises made by this bunch 9 years ago is really one which the people want them to keep. Simple.
Well, yeah, and from his camp, they're going to be coming back with, well, we're holding them to fire by getting you pharmacare and dental plans, and we're going to make all the big grocery guys pay. And I don't know how much more we can take of that either, and how much more are we going to be taken for as just being gullible? It's it's time for a change, and I guess Europe is finding that. Is it going to happen in North America? Who knows? We still have, in theory, another year and a bit to go before we're into an election.
Well, in the parliamentary system, technically that can be next week if the fellow who's propping up Trudeau pulls the pin on him. Let's face it. There's a serious question that he must be able to reconcile with his caucus. What to do? Does Trudeau throw him under the bus, or does he throw Trudeau under the bus? This is a very interesting conundrum. That in the smaller party, being the New Democrats, which, as you like to say, isn't so new anyway, they've got to figure out, what's their legacy going into the next election. Do you play the card that, we did the pharma, we did the dental plan? None of these things are really of any great consequence, but nobody asked for it, but that was their hill to die on, and they went and basically extorted from Trudeau's Liberals that will keep you in power if you do these minor kind of things for a few million bucks here and there, or perhaps even more than a few million. Nonetheless, they're really inconsequential, I think, to most Canadians.
By and large.
Yeah. By and large, I mean, it's. I can tell you personally that it saved me $50 at the dentist a month ago, because while my dentists accept the plan, they don't follow the rate chart that the Liberals dreamt up. So for a 40-minute excursion in the hygienist office, it saved me $50 from the bill. Okay, but listen, I'm already being taxed to the hill, so it's not like it's a death-defying amount of money here.
Well, we've said that before. There is no free lunch, and as much as you say it's a dental plan, it's being paid for somewhere somehow, and
Sure,
it's like
absolutely,
everything else, I guess.
absolutely. So we'll
So I
see.
guess,
I think the cracks are showing, and all things come in threes. First, the MP from Toronto Agincourt quit, Liberal guy on the weekend. Then the Conservatives won this riding in the by-election. Now, one more thing will happen as everything comes in threes. We'll see. I suspect we'll have some kind of wishy-washy statement from the PMO or one of his underlings, or they won't say anything until there's a big bang announcement made. And knowing the narcissism of the fellow, I think he will go for the big bang rather than some wishy-washy thing. That's it. And you know, does he want to take the risk that his pal pulls the rug out from under him, or does his narcissism say, "I'll pull the rug under him. I'll be in charge"? Because you got to remember who's in charge here. There's the time is running out for Jagmeet to prove he's in charge. Because as every day passes, his pal there can turn it around and dump him, and then he's got nothing. If he pulls the rug out from under Trudeau, then he can be kind of the hero here. If Trudeau pulls the rug out from under him first, he's got nothing.
yeah. I guess coupled with that, the U.S. is going into their election in November. Obviously, they're going to have their big leaders debate. I guess if the big three happens and we start to go into an election as well, there was that article you sent me about, what was it, almost 8 million illegals are in under the U.S. and they're now looking at whether the president can actually do something about it.
It's 7,298,486, according to the statistics from DHS.
If they know that, then they must know who these people are, right?
Yes.
And where they're located. But I guess that's the crux of my matter is that if you hadn't have treated immigration like a kid in a candy store, would we be in the problems that we're in now? We in Canada used to have very, very useful, non-biased system for selecting immigrants to come to the country.
Yes.
You had selection criteria that had to be met or not met, which determined whether you got a visa or you didn't get a visa. And over the years, it's been eroded away to ministerial discretion, which is often confused with whim and who has the biggest sob story or who's doing this or who's doing that. And with the hope that come election time that you'll be remembered as being the person that helped out so-and-so or did such and such, or but you can't continue to do that with an issue that has way bigger ramifications. And I think we're seeing that in places in Germany and in France where they've had enough. There's starting to be a huge backlash, and I would hate to have that happen here. Canada, North America, I think would be terrible.
Yeah, but if you're not paying attention, if you're just dithering at the top for whatever reason, because in the case of our illustrious leadership, they're dreaming of the post-nation state that has no sovereignty, that's basically just a place for people to live. And, their elite crowd will decide how those people live without having any particular reference to their rights, to their aspirations. It's the typical woke nonsense that they've been selling here. But, let's face it, in the US, when you have the equivalent of the population of 36 states having been imported into the United States during the Biden administration, people are starting to come to their senses and saying, listen, this guy's been doing nothing for 3 years. And to suddenly decide that he's going to do something because he thinks he has the power to do something, it really begs the question, what the hell are you talking about? You know, so I think it's people are coming to their senses on all of these issues, and it's a much bigger issue in the U.S. than in Canada, simply because of the drama with which the whole illegal, unwelcome, undocumented, unwanted, and ungrateful bunch has arrived. You know, the number of activities associated with this group, particularly now, it appears anyway in the last year, which is criminal in nature. We've had murder after murder, break-ins, I mean, just a total anarchy within the urban areas where literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of folks have shown up who are just running amok. And so you have a real stress on the social fabric of these urban centers. And, I don't know how they'll stitch this together. I mean, you can't say that, if after the election, Trump is president, he's going to deport 11 million people. That's just not going to happen. But there's going to be some reckoning somewhere along the line here. And, when we're talking about this, in 2 days, the Americans will have a chance to hear two old guys on the debate stage, which appears to be almost concocted already. But for the sake of our discussions, one will tell you everything is really wonderful, and the other one will tell you he's going to fix things because everything's rotten. But the key issues there in the U.S. are no different than in Canada and in Western Europe. You've got an economy that's really not doing anything for ordinary folks, regardless of all the BS that's being promoted by the leadership and their pals in the mainstream media. Crime is a serious problem as a result of an migration, refugee program globally that's out of control and seems to be directed from higher ups in a transnational way, whether it's through the UN or whether it's through the WEF policies or what have you. So there's common denominators in this. And then you have a whole bunch of niche arguments the vast majority of people don't care about. And they seem to be hoisting themselves up the flagpole with various, things that or programs that affect maybe 1 or 2% of the population given the program. I'm not going to rattle them all off because everybody knows what those are. That is cumulatively, that won't win you an election, and that doesn't give you the support of the people. So this is very strange times that we're going through. Never mind the fact that none of them seem to have any adult approach to the issues globally of famine, of war, of a nuclear Armageddon that they're fooling around with China, Russia, Pakistan, Iran, and whatever, and so nobody seems to want to talk about that. They want to talk about the stupid things that get on CNN or MSNBC or Fox in the U.S. and they get focused on that, yet rather than deal with the key issues. So it'll be interesting to see how this debate goes. I'm sure many hundreds of millions of people will be watching, and without, we don't have a vote in this, but we'll watch it. One of two things I think will happen. Either it'll be very illustrative of what we're just talking about, where you got sort of an incompetent approach to the questions, or you might get some real revelations. Hard to say. That it will be a drama of sorts. Whether it has any real impact, time will tell. But certainly, the incumbents in almost all of these countries are in deep trouble because they've made a mess of things. whether you're in France or in Canada or Germany or the US, everybody who's in a leadership position has basically a political albatross around their necks that they themselves created. So when I was reading the comments about the person who just lost this by-election in Toronto, St. Paul's riding, then the condescending approach seems to be a common denominator across the board. Well, we know you're having a tough time, so we'll work hard to fix it. You created a tough time. We ain't working hard to fix it. I mean, and I can go on, but I digress. That's really what is I think people have had enough. It's nonsense.
Well, yeah, and coupled with that, we've seen again some of the issues that you had pointed out earlier on today with our law enforcement is leaving a little bit to be desired.
We're in deep
trouble. Now what was it you were saying, the deputy chief of police in Ottawa?
Yeah, the former Ottawa deputy police chief faces charge of sexual assault. This fellow has been charged with assault in connection with an incident involving female police officers under his supervision at the time. The assault allegedly took place in the workplace. This is a June 25 news report from CTV News in Canada. But this particular individual has a checkered history going back years of misconduct, of assault, of essentially incompetence, and he's a deputy chief in two different police forces.
Well, and I guess that really raises the question of, why did this particular individual get the job that they have, and how are we going to be dealing with this as a law enforcement agency to garner trust back? I mean, gosh, a deputy police chief, sexual assault charges are pretty serious, even in its watered down state. I mean, when I was growing up, rape was rape, and now rape is sexual assault, which it doesn't diminish it, but it certainly sounds like it diminishes the whole problem.
Well, in our pre-production, we said a lot of things, or we looked at a lot of cases, which we're not going to, talk about in particular here in the podcast. But we know that there's something amiss in the Canadian law enforcement community, from coast to coast. There's just some things that are seemingly reflective of a higher instruction that is coming from the political levels, as opposed to being sworn officers to carry out, their duties. The head of the RCMP was on TV yesterday on Global News. Commissioner Duhaime admits that we can probably do more and be a little more aggressive about what kind of charges can be laid with intimidation and harassment of pro-Hamas activities. This is 260 days after the October 7th attack in Israel. What is this fellow doing, talking to the media and saying, well, we could probably do more? He's done very little. I mean, the RCMP has had all sorts of opportunities to do serious police work, whether it's the business of the paid off, bought off, corrupt MPs that no one wants to name, because the same RCMP commissioner is going on, well, if we name the people, it'll get us in trouble with our law enforcement partners abroad. Excuse me? What do you mean your law enforcement partners abroad are, you're going to have difficulty with them? Yeah, you're talking about the Chinese police force? You're talking about the Ukrainian secret police? Are you talking about the Indian police? All of whose countries are deeply involved, apparently, in the lives of our MPs, or have been bought out, or have bought out, their countries have bought out, allegedly, our MPs? This is treason. And this guy's talking about, I don't want to say anything because I might upset, the Chinese police. That's not your problem, pal. Your job is to do your job. You're not a politician.
I think it is. Yeah. There's a common myth, I guess, that we can't charge or we shouldn't charge, and I guess that just to me just boils down to at what stage are you prepared to let anarchy rule? And I don't know. We need to have rules. They need to be enforced. That, you know, do we have to go back to hangings? Maybe not. Do we have to go back to corporal punishment? Maybe not. But we certainly have to have some kind of punitive measure to enforce or reinforce to these people that you can't continually do the things that you're doing. You know, where I live in Surrey now, we have had 3 sex offenders released back into the community because they've done their statutory time, and everybody knows that they're going to be reoffending. It's not a matter of if they're going to reoffend, it's when they're going to reoffend. And there doesn't seem to be any repercussions, you know. And yeah, well, maybe the guy has done his time, but maybe we need to change the laws. You know, if a person's a recidivist, they're a recidivist. They're not, you know, a leopard's not going to change its spots. You know, do we need to have a special category? Do we need to have special places for these people to be put so they can?
Yeah, I have a special place for these people. On a plane, go back to where you came from if that's the case. And if it's not the case, see you in jail for a few years, not being released with no bail over and over again like a revolving door. Because again, you know, when 7 out of 10 Canadians, for example, want the government to release the names of these MPs that are being bought off by the aforementioned countries and their various law enforcement pals, you know, because you can't. This is not how you run a country. This is not how the voters or the citizens or the residents have faith in their leadership. What are you talking about? You know, there's something strange that's been imported into this country from, I think, partially because of our location next door to Hollywood policing that has infected the urban centers in the U.S. I mean, you know, the other day someone was prattling on about, you know, cash bonds and what have you. We don't have the same system in this country. You know, it doesn't work like that. But they bought into this business that, you know, everybody has to be given second, third, and fourth chances, which is what they're running in the urban centers from New York to Chicago to LA, and they're up to their necks in trouble. And so that, you know, the various apparently chiefs of police in the urban centers in this country, they must watch a lot of American TV because they're talking just like that. But the justice system is totally different, yet they've morphed into this same approach. Okay, we don't want to upset the mob. Excuse me. You know, you're not here to make policy. You're made to carry out the law. And they got this all backwards. But it's, you know, we're not in.
No, it gets down to a point of, if you do the things that the law says you're supposed to do and they're wrong, the courts will fix that.
Correct.
And that's the way it should be.
Exactly. But there's a real problem when, as we start out, how does some fellow who has a checkered history from the day he joins the police force up and down, you know, is twice made deputy chief of police in 2 different police departments when he has misconduct charges, sexual assault charges, and finally he quits, he resigns, and now they lay charges 2 years after his collection of almost $500,000 in back pay. Like, what in the hell is going on here? So, you know, we kind of scrambled this a little bit, but you can see that there's kind of a rot that's starting to permeate in the leadership of the, and you know, my pet thing is that if you're going to criticize the leadership and the rank and file still carry out the rotten policies of the leadership, and the rank and file is just as rotten. So, you know, if there's any of our friends in the law enforcement community watching, feel free to let us know what you think, because at this point, I just start to feel very uncomfortable with having to continually stand up for our former colleagues or present colleagues or whatever in the law enforcement community who are going along to get along. No, speak up. If you got a corrupt chief, get rid of your chief. Open your mouth. Let's not go down the road that happened in the post-war era, going back 80 years here, where Viva's just following orders. No, you don't follow orders, okay? That's not how this works. Okay?
Well, that's true. Yeah, it's interesting that you're. Oh, I was only following the orders, or you can't do this or you can't do that. We have a subscription to a streaming service that deals a lot with just British shows, and it's amazing. Even there, the law enforcement shows are showing just the police that are more political entities than they are law enforcement entities. Inevitably, the chief superintendent is calling somebody to say, well, this is so-and-so, and he happens to belong to the same cricket club that I do, so you better drop that investigation. Or, you can't have that kind of buddy stuff. A law is a law. I don't think anybody should be above the law. I don't think anybody should think they should be above the law. I think the issues are, the laws are there to protect the vast majority of the citizenry, not the few. And I think here in Canada, we're told that we have a justice system, which I think is a great misnomer. I think we have a criminal system because it sort of seems to favor the criminals. And at some point, we have to stand back and say, it's really too bad that this is only the 99th time that you've been got for stealing a car, but this time you got to go to jail.
I agree. And the other thing, we touched upon this earlier before we went on the air, is that we're under the misapprehension here that we have certain rights and freedoms, which I think are basically imagined, since we are so inundated with American culture and news and media influences, that people actually think that they have American style rights, like a First Amendment, for example. We don't have such a thing in this country. We have the freedom of speech as long as it meets the government's criteria. And we've had changes to our criminal code over the last number of years to make that pretty clear. You can ask some of the folks who find themselves in front of a magistrate because of the way the system is being manipulated. We need to be very careful with how we perceive our ability to rectify some of these wrongs. So it just doesn't work that way. But I think that in the end, things like the election results in St. Paul's, rioting in Toronto, shows there might be a little bit of light coming in the curtain, just like the one over your right shoulder there, that maybe there is light. And we may have run the cycle. We may be at the beginning of the change. I mean, everything goes around like a bicycle wheel. So I'm sad that the Oilers lost, but happy that the election proved that the people still have a voice and can exercise it.
That is good. And with the analogy of the Oilers and the Panthers, at the end of the game, they still lined up and shook hands. They might have been mortal enemies for 7 games in a row, and there was a lot of trash talk, and there was an awful lot of issues brought up and about this and about that. But at the end of the day, they still got up and shook hands, and everybody's back to being just kind of like normal people. And maybe if we could use that kind of thought process, would we have the adversarial natures of our politics? Well, you know, this woman from Toronto should have gone down to the headquarters of the other guy and shook his hand and said, well, it was a good race. I lost. Congratulations. I hope you do well. Like, it would have been nice if, you know, if the conservative guy had lost and walked down and said the same thing to whoever happened to win. You know, can
Well,
one calculate
that's a
sports?
level of civility, I think, that at the moment is, it'd be nice. I agree with you, but I'm not sure if it's not just wishful thinking.
Well, I think it's very definite wishful thinking. You know, you had mentioned before the issue of the way currently in Canada, in particular, we have a leader that is a master at making people at odds with each other.
Oh,
I think it's the biggest thing that came with that.
Absolute master.
We had Quebec now that gets $750 million to deal with illegal immigrants. And the rest of the country is kind of left out in the cold. So automatically, all that's done now is create another big division within the fabric of this country. You know,
well, you know, it's been not inclusion, it's been exclusion of groups. It's not been equity, it's been elitism. It's not been diversity, it's been payoffs. I'm sorry, you know, but you know, this has not worked out the way the billboard promotes it. You know, it's easy to be critical, but look, when you're stepping over homeless people, when you can't pay your groceries, when your rent's sky high, when you're unemployed, and all you're getting is sinecure comments from the leadership, you're going to be kicked out of office. And I think the little light at the tunnel, we're coming through the curtains, is exactly what happened yesterday or this morning as the results came in. So, you know, we can end this on a positive note and say, okay, you know, this, in spite of all the negativity that we get, every so often though, reality comes home, and you know, let's hope that continues. And next week we'll be able to do the post-mortem on the American debate, which will be long after it's done. But
yeah,
we'll see how the dust settles on that one. It could be very, very interesting.
Yeah, and maybe there'll be other issues. Maybe the big third wheel will fall down here in Canada too. You know, it's hard to say.
Comes in threes. Yeah, we could very well have a very different discussion about who's at the top and who's not. Well,
and again, to the leader of the official opposition in Canada, should you happen to be listening, don't take this as a big victory. Learn from it. You know, why do you think your candidate won? It certainly wasn't because of any great policies or whatnot that are coming from the conservative camp.
And let's also remind him, while we're at it, even though he probably will never see this, you've made a number of promises. And if you think that if you get to win, we're not going to hold your feet to the fire, you're sadly mistaken.
Yes, and on that note, we'll sign off.
Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Tell your friends. Buy us a coffee if you can. Got to pay the bandwidth. And we'll see you next week.
You betcha. Have fun.
I will try.